Hello everyone, it's Jean from the Inky Studio. Today is going to be part 2 and the last part in this little segment as I put together this little paper bag mini journal. And I will list down part 1 down below to show you how I started out. And today I'm going to be finishing up the cover, and then I'm going to sew in the signatures and start working on the inside and altering ephemera and that type of thing. So I hope you enjoy. Going to start off with working at the back of the cover, and I have a hanky here. It's a real thin little hanky, cut off the corner, and I made it larger than I need because I'm going to be putting a hem around the edges there. And in the corner I'm going to sew on one of my vintage buttons, and I used usually I use a thread that blends in with the button, but this time I used a brown thread as a little bit of a contrast, and I really ended up liking that. It made it even more vintage looking. And I'm going to put a little drop of Fabri-Tac on the button back so that I can glue it down, because I think that, I don't know, I think it works a little bit better than glitter glue, but I don't know, maybe not. But I know I can't use Fabri-Tac on the hanky because it would come through and look really bad, so I'm just putting down some glitter glue on the cloth part of it. And because you're cutting on the bias and the hanky is really thin, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be a little bowed and bent, but that's okay. That's kind of the shabby look of it. And then load it up with a couple pieces of ephemera, just so I can get an idea. Now I'm going to work on the flap. Oh no, I'm going to sew in the signatures. And I'm checking to make sure that all the little short, small pieces are going to be caught by at least one thread. And I'm going to connect it all to the cover, stabilize it there on the 4 corners. And the 3-hole pamphlet stitch is super simple, and for something small like that, it's just right. I'm going to eye up the center, and then on the 2 edges I'm coming down about a 1/2 inch from the edge, and that's it. No measurement really. I'm going to start from the inside of the journal because I want the threads to be on the inside, and just go through the middle hole, one of the outer holes, and down to the last hole and up the center again. Just making sure that when I end up, I want the 2 threads to be underneath the middle thread so that I can tie that middle thread down. And just knot it a few times. And we're done. Now I plan to put lace on the spine anyway, so not too concerned about how straight that is. So I have put some ribbon in the middle of this piece of lace, or eyelet lace trim. And the first thing I did was I applied glue directly to the lace, which really it's not lace, it's actually fabric. So it wasn't as successful as I had hoped. It doesn't stick as well when I did it that way. So eventually here I get unhappy with it. Yeah, it just wasn't enough glue. I think because it was a cloth, it just required a lot more glue than lace usually does, a thinner lace. So I just applied a good layer of glue down there, and that seemed to work a lot better. You do have to hold it a little bit for it to grip, to give time for the glue to sink into both the paper and fabric and have it grip well. And just glue down the little edges there. I glued them down while the journal was folded, just so that it can stretch over that a little bit, over that fold. And tack down the ribbon. And I'm going to leave the ribbons, the tails on them a little longer. Just thought that was kind of cute. And now the spine is all done. And so the last thing I'm going to do to the cover is put on some lace on the small flap. And just deciding where on the flap I wanted the lace. I didn't really like it down below because I felt it was too busy. Kind of detracted from the lady in the painting there. So I ended up putting it on upper part of the flap. And I learned my lesson. I am now gluing the paper before I put the lace down. It does work a little better. But sometimes, you know, the other way works better, so yeah. So now we're going to work on some of the ephemera inside the journal, some little individual pieces, embellishing them a little bit and making them a little bit more than just a piece of paper. Oh, and here I have like I did on the other side, I put a little scrap of fabric with some print on it. And I kind of like that architectural print on that fabric was really nice. Oh, before we do that, we're going to, I've forgotten how I do this, right? So I have a little fold. I'm going to fold down this music paper, and it's heavy enough that I think this technique works well. Letting that little bird peek out through there, sort of a happy accident there. And I'm going to sew a button on that fold. Now, when you sew onto paper, it's important to try to go in and out of the same holes. So the 2 holes I had to make for that side of the button, I just tried really hard to find them again. Because if you pepper too many holes back there, then it can tear away pretty easily. So that's the only thing you need to look for. And I'm using the brown thread again. Just securing it in the back by going through the threads a few times, and then I'm going to put some glue back there. And that will hold that in pretty well. Now I pulled some ephemera from my digital kit, my Vintage Blues digital kit, and using these collage strips. Just kind of give you an idea how to use any collage strip. And of course you can cut out the individual little pieces, and I use that for a tuck spot. And here I'm going to cut down, cut off the sides and save the middle of that strip. And I can kind of look at that design there on top to where to cut it evenly on both sides. And then I have a belly band. And you know, for mini journals, these collage strips are really perfect. They're just the right size. Everything's been reduced down to fit so well. And they also make really good pieces of ephemera to put into small things like small bags or small pockets or whatever. They're just a nice size for that as well. And not just my collage strips, but any collage strip works like this. And you know, you can cut anywhere. You don't always have to cut right at the obvious place. You can cut, like here I saved the words from that top part, and I thought that really framed that little card out nicely. So it's a way to get creative. Now I have these two here I'm going to embellish, and I just simply got a piece of lace and I'm sewing a button in it onto it. And here I put the tails, I let the tails go. I didn't knot it, just let the tails come out on both ends. And you don't have to be quite as careful about the same holes when you have fabric, and the fabric will shore that up a little bit. And here's a piece of craft foam. That white piece is actually craft foam. And I'm going to start poking holes, and I'm using my ruler to poke a hole, I think every 1/4 of an inch on that ruler, poking a hole in there. Doesn't have to be huge, but a little bit of something. So the craft foam kind of helps you poke through. And then you might want to go through and poke ones that didn't get through so well. And I'm going to use some pearl cotton because it's thicker than just regular thread. And you can also use embroidery floss. Just going to put a large knot, and you want it larger than your hole, of course. And going to sew up the side. And because you've already got your holes poked in there, you can sew evenly all the way up. And you can poke holes that are not even and not have an even thing. But what I like about it is I suppose you could theoretically poke with your needle as you sew, but sometimes I've done that and I've ended up folding the paper because maybe my needle wasn't sharp enough, or this was just so much easier, I felt, to poke the holes in there. And you don't really need an awl. I could have poked those holes with a large sewing needle too, like those big large needles you find. And I'm just knotting it off with a little tail and letting that all show. Now I'll just put a little bit of glue there just to kind of make sure it stays there. Kind of sorry I didn't go all the way around, or if I'd had some blue pearl cotton, I would have loved to have done that, but I didn't have any blue, so I just went with the brown. I did find in my scrap pile a little bit of blue ribbon. Didn't know I had any, so I am going to use that. Now I've got this punch, and I have no idea how old this punch is. It's ancient, but I love using it this way. And I threaded this wrong. You need to thread from. You need to thread it in such a way that when you get done, your ribbon is all in the back, and then you come through the same holes again on each side. Now you do not need this punch to do this method. You can use, you can punch in a hole punch a couple times and thread through that as well. And just put a little dot of glue on the back and cut those, cut the ribbon so it looks like it's a bow. So it has sort of a faux bow, that's a rhyming look to it. And yeah, now I kind of wish I had reversed it, you know, so the ribbon was on the right side rather than the left, but that's all right. So that one was altered. So we're going to alter these two and pretty much going to use that same method to do it. And I didn't show here the extra embellishment I put on it after I threaded the ribbon through, but I am going to show it at the end. Going to add that to the end here. But let me just, I'm just going to show it one more time in case you just missed it the first. And so if you use a hole punch, you'll want to leave a little bit of space between the two holes, because that'll be where your knot, quote unquote, knot of the ribbon will be, and then thread it out like this. You don't need to use skinny ribbon for this idea either. I will show you at the end of the video. I used different ribbon for the other piece of ephemera. So now once we're, you know, we're pretty much complete, but I'm just going to show you that the ribbon then gets threaded in that eyelet. And I usually wrap around twice and give it a tie there on the side. And so this is pretty much been a detailed process video in these past two parts, and I'll link down below part 1. Well, that was our little video on finishing up our little mini journal here. I did want to point out a couple of things here. That is, I used a wider ribbon than the little thin ribbon here that I used on the other two, and I had mentioned that I wanted to point that out to you. And this is when you use a wider ribbon, it just means there's going to be more of pleats in here, and I like that look. And I went ahead and I sewed a button there in, no, actually I sewed the button first. I put thread through the button first, and then I glued the button onto the ribbon here, and I added some little lace. So that's how I made that. And so yeah, sometimes using a wider ribbon just even makes it look more authentic, I think, in some cases. So I didn't want to point that out to you because I somehow didn't get that recorded in the video. And anyway, so this is our cute little journal. I will be listing these in my Etsy shop, and probably next week I'll be doing a flip through and letting you know when that will happen. But anyways, thank you so much for viewing, and I hope this gave you some ideas and inspiration for your mini paperback journal. So have a great and crafty day. Bye.